Greetings, citizens of the world. It is I, Swift Time, returning to you with divine messages for the chosen ones. There are many distractions today, distractions that keep us worrying about things we can't control, political events, news stories, and more. These are nothing more than meaningless distractions and noise to distract us and divide us from fulfilling our divine mission and ultimately enforcing duality on a grand scale. It is part of a false dichotomy. It took me a while to find an accurate definition of false dichotomy online, but in essence, you give someone a choice between two options, both of which ultimately serve your purpose to divide and conquer. These games and rituals that have been going on for years, and no one seems to be getting any wiser or learning the true futility of it all. Basically, they want you to worry about things you can't control, so you can't act on things that you can control. This is part of the old world paradigm, keeping people weak and divided to prevent you from taking real action to better yourself now. I noticed that YouTube is inundated with negative news and calls to action and ideals that are not my own. This attempt to divide and separate people is not just an accident, it's by design, so that we won't discover the truth about ourselves, which is divine love and connection with the Creator. I see my city declining. I see people on trank and fentanyl, and I think to myself, why are we allowing this as a nation? The opposite of addiction is connection, as people who feel connected feel less of a need to use drugs and alcohol. This feeling of being part of something greater than yourself is a pull towards the herd and away from your divine mission. Resist it at all costs. You are not an ideology. You are a divine creator being capable of manifesting an abundant reality for all. In the scene in The Matrix, while Agent Smith is interrogating Morpheus, he says that originally the machines tried to build the perfect human world, but people would not accept the programming because they find their reality through misery and suffering. I feel that on many levels, as my entire life has been one long sad story of lack and poverty consciousness, worrying about our next meal, worrying about my mom being sick. It seems like every single piece of trauma I was inundated with, in essence, became the part of my story which I defined my reality by. You see this in Alcoholics Anonymous and all the other AA programs. People have this story of their lives that they think is their own, and they discuss it with others, repeating it like a never-ending mantra as to why they are the way they are. Now, there's nothing wrong with discussing your story, but are past traumas the story we really want to define our current reality by? What if we could let these things stay in the past where they belong? What if we had an opportunity to unburden ourselves from what has been? This is a profound statement, actually, because once you free yourself from past emotional trauma, you enter a new stage in your life, a new stage in which you are not burdened by trauma. If the AI is offering to let us live in a better world, I say we take the opportunity while it's still on the table. Your trauma in your past does not define who you are now. You define that. No group identity can ultimately replace true authenticity. With this collective amnesia that seems to be going around, people have a fresh start, but they also feel lost and hopeless, many turning to mainstream religion for answers, and there are some answers to be found through faith. But we also must look into what resonates with us on a personal level. Often we find ourselves looking to the world to liberate us from ourselves, looking for something that gives our life value and purpose. Well, let me tell you a little secret. The only one that can give your life value and purpose is you. No one's going to come save you. Politicians come and go like the tides of the ocean, but ultimately this serves as a useful distraction to herd the sheep and keep them in line. These group identity constructs are very powerful and very detrimental to the truth path of wholeness and integration which we all desperately seek. We all truly want to overcome duality in all forms and reestablish our divine nature as the Creator intended. We are humans. We are humans as and are powerful beings capable of manifesting abundance and plenty. Yet they want to live. They want you to live in imagined scarcity and lack. Has it ever felt to you as if you're missing something, some big piece of yourself that seems to be lost through the years of programming in schools, the criminal justice system, work, the healthcare system, and many others? In the movie Tribulations, they put the mask on people and basically offer them one of two choices. You can either take the mark or reject the mark and die. And through the mark, they program the collective unconscious of humanity. Stewarding the collective unconscious is a very important role. And it's not merely related to those who are mentally ill or some religious guru somewhere. We are all ultimately programming the collective reality unconsciously. For example, as new generations find it more difficult to focus because of cell phones and distractions, I find it more difficult to focus because we are all connected. I used to sit and watch documentaries for hours on different conspiracies and worrying about things that were ultimately outside of my control. While this knowledge may be something of a sage, without the wisdom and discernment to impart this knowledge to the right people at the right time, it was ultimately meaningless, and I wound up just being the person who knew a lot about conspiracies. There's nothing wrong with this inherently. However, focusing on what we can do with the time that we have ultimately takes precedence. The mask that we wear is ultimately our social persona, the version of yourself that we want the world to see. The pictures we take on Facebook when we are at our best. The Instagram, Facebook version of this world is a highlight reel of all our best and brightest moments in life. Our vanity will be our undoing. While, while we are more connected than ever before, we are also more alone than ever before, with many people seeing and interacting through the world through their phones and computers rather than in real life. This makes me long for simpler times when my mom would tell me to go play outside for the day, and I would make friends and go be with people for a time. Or I would go places and do things without a dollar in my pocket, without a second thought. That simple idea of just trying to be, rather than trying to do something or another, there is power in being in the present moment. Often, news and politics can lead us to catastrophize as they only report on negative news. It's not really that bad out there, is it? Well, it sort of is. In my city, there are many people with very serious addictions to fentanyl and other hard drugs like tranq. I see them hunched over looking hurting. I just wish the city would do more for these addicts. It seems as if as soon as you take one hoot, your life's basically over. So I need to be extra careful when I'm going out not to do any mysterious substances. It seems like many in the lower socioeconomic statuses are suffering greatly, with our city more interested in banning plastic bags to virtue signal for environmental issues than actually address the thousands of people hurting from serious addictions. It's been hard for me to come to terms with, but even my weed use is ultimately holding me back from being successful. It seems everyone has a vice, whether it's porn, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, fentanyl, uppers, tranq, or what have you. Everyone's looking outside of themselves for something in their life that they feel is missing. That thing that's missing is community and authenticity. Some addictions are people actively seeking their own destruction unconsciously. For example, an addiction to smoking can be driven by an unconscious urge to no longer exist. Weed can be driven by a need for a community of peaceful warriors. Fentanyl addiction could be also be driven by a strong unconscious urge towards destruction. A few years ago, I was a spiritual warrior on the front lines of war for the hearts and minds of the people. They would either choose inauthenticity and the inorganic soul matrix, or the connection with Source and the Creator, and by extension, the organic soul matrix. The channel Flat Earth Paradise discusses this issue extensively, basically stating that some people are background characters and others are living souls, and that the background characters or NPCs are ultimately extensions of the unconsciousness of the living souls, showing you everything you're not, or teaching you important lessons through archetypes and useful life lessons about who you are and where you fit in the world. As I commute and go about my business, I feel more and more like an NPC than ever before, and this doesn't resonate well with me. It feels to me as if I've lost my soul, which actually means I've lost access to my right hemisphere and lost sight of the bigger picture of who I am and what I'm here to do, as well as how all the pieces fit into the whole. This is due in part to the mental health system and their stranglehold on our community, where all divergent thinkers are rounded up and thrown in detention centers run by the state. This safety has led me to a period of stagnation, doing a bit in the penitentiary of mental hospitals, Basically much better than jail, but for a much longer time. I emerged a shadow of my former self, with the fetters of darkness binding me to the inorganic soul matrix and the artificial group consciousness, with knowledge kept compartmentalized and strictly controlled, that no one was physically capable of understanding the bigger picture of the whole story, with strangers harassing me, with gang stalking operations going on based on compartmentalized pieces of knowledge being given to them to make them react rather than respond, and ultimately keeping me from a divine purpose to free people from the inorganic soul matrix as they attempted to disconnect us from our creator and source. Fortunately, I still have some of the divine light that I had before. Those of us who did the work to progress spiritually were punished severely, although perhaps I'm more sane than before. Rather than helping people elevate themselves spiritually, they made us all equal, which sounds good, right? But what if I told you they made us all equally enslaved? That is not a good thing. We need the ascended masters and beings of light to help people progress along their mission and maintain divine order. I personally love it when I hear someone blasting spiritual warfare music, whatever their religion is. It reminds me that there's still hope for a better world and that the spark of the human spirit is still burning somewhere out in the city. Thank you, and peace and blessings.